In Call of Duty, whether it be multiplayer or Warzone, how many times have you died to an enemy and you're left wondering how you died so fast? It felt like you didn't have time to react even though you were the one waiting for the enemy and you were prepared for the fight. And yet it seemed like the enemy saw you before you seen them. Is it because they're cheating? Is it your internet connection? Are you just a dog shit player with no hopes of ever being more than just an online punching bag? Well, relax. Any and all of those could be true, but in most cases, the actual reason is much more technical and it's very easy to stop this from happening to you. You don't have to go and upgrade your internet connection or buy any new hardware. And in fact, by the end of this video, you will be a much better player as you're going to understand how to use this mechanic to your advantage and finally stop being the sitting duck. To fully understand why this happens, we have to take a deep dive into something that, while unintentional, has been a part of online first-person shooter games for decades now, and it's something that's present in every single gunfight, and yet most people don't even know it exists. What I'm referring to is the phenomenon in gaming known as Peeker's Advantage. Peeker's Advantage is exactly what it sounds like. It's an advantage taken by the player peeking. They could be peeking around a corner, peeking from behind cover, or just simply entering a doorway. Regardless of where they are, the player turning a corner or popping out from behind cover is going to be the player with an advantage in 99% of the gunfights. And the other 1% is something that we'll discuss later on in the video. The first thing I'd like to do is discuss in layman's terms why Peeker's Advantage is a thing. Having an understanding of why this happens in-game is going to help you use this more often. It's a lot easier to implement a technique into your gameplay when you know why it works. So every input that you do with your controller or your keyboard is sent to the Call of Duty servers or whatever game you're playing, whether it's Rainbow Six Siege, Valorant. Those are two of the biggest titles where Peeker's Advantage is used strategically. When you send these inputs to your Call of Duty server, they then reroute that information to your enemy and the rest of the lobby. So to make a long story short, if you turn a corner and you take a gunfight, you're going to be the player that's sending the info to the server first, meaning you don't have to wait to receive it. Since you'll be the one initiating the fight, your opponent who is camping on the other side of the corner is going to have to receive the info from Call of Duty server before they can send their own inputs. You know what? I might be making this a bit more complicated than it needs to be. Let's do this instead. I had a video game developer on my channel in the past explaining this, and I have their channel linked below. Their name is Wes Proder, and they were able to explain why Peeker's Advantage happens from the developer's side. So let me run the clip of someone much smarter than me and more in touch with the technological side of things explain what Peeker's Advantage is, and then we can discuss how to use it strategically in any FPS game.
I think it's just the amount of milliseconds it takes for your computer or client to send and receive data from the server. The data is then sent to your opponent's clients. So if I walk forward on 20 ping, the server doesn't know that until 20 milliseconds afterwards. If my enemy is on 30 ping, he will then take 30 milliseconds to receive the information that I walked forward, for a total of 50 milliseconds. So let's say I'm behind a wall and I strafe right. My enemy won't see me till 50 milliseconds after I see him. This means I have 50 milliseconds to line up my shots and try to kill my enemy before he can kill me. Keep in mind, the average human reaction time is around 250 milliseconds. Most gamers are a bit faster and probably closer to 200, especially at top ranks of games. So basically, you could be increasing your enemy's reaction time by 25% going off the 50 millisecond number. This would give you a massive advantage in any gunfight. In most games, however, Peeker's Advantage is really overpowered, so try to include it in your playstyle as much as possible.
Well, you guys heard the man. Someone with the design knowledge of video games has recommended that we actually use Peeker's Advantage in every possible gunfight. And maybe now it makes sense why campers don't actually have higher KDs than the aggressive players.
Wow.
So now that we understand what Peeker's Advantage is and that it is something that we all need to start using, when you peek, your character model becomes visible to the enemy, but thanks to the game's processing delay, you see them slightly before they see you. And as Wes Proder mentioned, this gives you a crucial moment to react and fire first. So how can we manipulate this design flaw and turn it into our advantage? We could just start running around corners and killing our enemies before they even see us, right? Of course not. There are actually certain mechanics in Call of Duty that go hand in hand with Peeker's Advantage though. But for starters, one thing that we can rule out is sprinting around a corner into a gunfight. Why can't we just sprint into a fight and utilize Peeker's Advantage? Well, because with the amount of time it takes for you to shoot your weapon after sprinting and then aiming in, animation, aka your sprint to fire speed, it completely eliminates the benefit of peeker's advantage. This is why when you get slammed by someone pushing you, they're almost always taking the advantage aggressively. Now last year I explained the most commonly used aggressive example of peeker's advantage, and that was to jump around a corner and take a fight. This is still incredibly effective and a solid way to utilize peeker's advantage, but with Modern Warfare 3 bringing the return of movement, also known as just slide canceling, to Warzone and multiplayer, that has introduced two new much more effective ways to catch your camping opponents off guard. The less effective of the two, but still a very underrated method, is sliding around corners and using the new tactical stance to spray down your enemies. I'm not going to waste your time as I have an entire video breaking down tactical stance that I'll link in the description if you want to know more about it, but in this video we'll break down the most effective strategy for peeker's advantage, and that is to slide cancel angles into your fights. Now if you somehow don't know yet, slide canceling is when you slide and then press the jump button, and it completely cancels out your slide animation, bringing your gun back up, hence the name slide cancel. But it also allows you to enter rooms, turn corners, and find gunfights more aggressively, and this is why you never see pro streamers run through a doorway where an enemy may be, but they instead always slide cancel into the door or around the corner, because if you slide just before you turn the corner or enter a room and then you cancel it once you clear the doorway or the corner, you can have your gun up and ready for a fight in a split second. And now factoring in peeker's advantage, for example, if you know an enemy is in the next room waiting for you, you can easily time a slide cancel into the doorway, which will essentially activate your peeker's advantage window. This window will depend on your ping as well as your opponent's ping, so it isn't always the same, but it's usually a few dozen milliseconds. And once you turn a corner or enter a room, especially with the slide cancel, your peeker's advantage window is activated. You then have a fraction of a second to find your opponent and line up your shots. And while a fraction of a second doesn't sound like much, in Call of Duty multiplayer, there are weapons that will kill you much quicker than half a second, so every aspect of the game that you can use to gain an upper hand is absolutely crucial. All it really takes is you hitting one bullet before your enemy reacts for you to win the gunfight, and if you're used to being the camper and you're sick of dying to aggressive players, it's time for you to turn the tides. Start forcing yourself to utilize peeker's advantage until it becomes a natural reaction and you're able to win gunfights after you slide cancel into a room. It will take time, but you can do it, and I subconsciously slide cancel around every corner and doorway in Call of Duty, and I have a 5 KD in Warzone, and I've reached the iridescent ranks in Warzone and multiplayer both by using this to my advantage. Now what if we're in a situation where we can't take the fight to the opponent, we're pinned down and we have to wait for their push? Well, there is a slight peeker's advantage strategy with that I use, and many pros don't even think of this. If you're forced to lay down and wait or to sit behind cover, start strafing either left or right depending on the situation. So if the enemy is coming from your left side, strafe or crawl towards your left side. While this won't gain you any advantage over the enemy, it will mitigate their peeker's advantage window by factoring in your own. Kinda hard to explain, so I'm just gonna hop in the game and give you a live example. I loaded up Modern Warfare 3 Ranked play, and we actually got the perfect map for this example. Basically the goal here is if someone has to push me and I'm pinned down, I'm basically just gonna crawl or like move in their direction to mitigate the peeker's advantage that they would get. Took the fight right to him, took the fight to him. That's a perfect example. Got a 3-piece, wow. So look, I know they're gonna wanna push in here, so I'm gonna be crawling slowly to the left because they're on my left side, and it's gonna kind of take away the peeker's advantage. Damn, I should have waited a second probably. That was kind of the perfect example. Or like if I'm right here, I know they don't really have to come this way, but if you're behind cover and like the doorway's right here, just move left to right. Not only does it give you a little bit of help towards peeker's advantage, not only does it help mitigate the peeker's advantage, but it actually gives you an additional boost to your aim assist, which plenty of people have covered, including myself. That rotational aim assist that you get is super helpful. Now, speaking of the aim assist buff that you get while you're moving, which is called rotational aim assist, this is automatically being factored in anytime you slide cancel into a fight because you're going to be moving your analog sticks. So you're going to have a fraction of a second where you're able to see the enemy before they can even see you. You're then going to have an additional buff to your aim assist, but on top of that, if you're slide canceling or jumping around the corner, you're also a much harder target to hit, and that's something I haven't even discussed in this video. Sitting behind a box and watching a doorway leads to you getting your head ripped off. You're an easy target because you're sitting still, plus the enemy will get that peeker's advantage, but if you turn the tides and you slide cancel, it's really hard for certain people to aim at you. Even myself, I find it difficult at times to track people who are slide canceling into me, aka breaking breaking my camera. And I'm gonna have an in-depth guide on how to actually use slide canceling here soon. Instead of doing like a movement guide that everyone else does, I'm gonna break down the mistakes that people have in their movement and in their movement guides and where they can be more effective and stop wasting movement. So make sure you hit the notification button if that sounds interesting to you. Now that we know we'd become a harder target, we see the enemy before they see us, and we have more aim assist, that's already multiple advantages that you have in every gunfight that you take Peeker's advantage with slide canceling to the enemy. Let's talk about that 1% that I mentioned where Peeker's advantage might not benefit you. If you're in a situation, whatever the case may be, where your ping is over 100 milliseconds, in all likelihood, Peeker's advantage is not going to benefit you very much. In these situations, you're going to be better off still using Peeker's advantage, but it's just not going to have anywhere near as much of an effect as it usually would. Every day, my ping fluctuates between 30 and 60 to 70, and you don't notice too much of a difference between 30 and 70 ping on Peeker's advantage situations. But anytime I'm in a lobby where my ping is above 100 or 120, I notice that if I'm the one turning the corner, I'm usually not going to be the beneficiary of that situation. But any situation other than that, it's better for you to be the aggressive player. And the last thing I want to throw in there is that this is why snaking is so effective. It's one of the few gameplay flaws that they actually focused on fixing. The main reason is because between the netcode with Peeker's advantage, snaking, aka laying down and then standing back up simultaneously, non-stop behind cover, it basically made it to where you were getting non-stop Peeker's advantage and you could shoot players at all times. This clip is a perfect example of it. While it is nerfed, it is still super effective, so make sure if you have some cover and you're stuck behind it, you're snaking it. Go prone and stand back up, sprint into the cover instead of just standing up and down. And another thing you can do with Peeker's advantage is use it to get information. This is why throwing shoulders is so important, because with Peeker's advantage, you're not going to die if you're throwing shoulders. You have enough time to throw a shoulder around a corner, get whatever information about the enemy you need, and then quickly duck back behind cover before they're able to even get a shot off. This is especially effective for people who play like Search and Destroy, for example, where you have a quick time to kill and a quick time to die, but you need to get some information while the enemy team is going to be camping all the bomb sites. So if you just throw some shoulders out, figure out where they're at, then you can figure out what you're going to do after that. Now, I mentioned the guide to slide canceling that I have coming out, and also making sure that we're not wasting our time doing unnecessary movement, but I also mentioned things like snaking that I'm going to be making totally separate videos on. So if you don't know exactly how to do it or don't know what it means, I made a video last year on snaking. Feel free to go check it out, but I'm going to make a much better one here within the next week or so. Now that we're winding down Modern Warfare 3's lifespan and coming up on Black Ops 6, which has the potential to actually be the best Call of Duty game we've received since the golden era, it's important that we get all of our tips together so that we're ready when the new game releases. And that's exactly what this channel's here for, so hit the subscribe button if you guys are excited to see those videos. Shout out to everyone on the screen for commenting on my last video, and if you do want a shout out in the next video, comment the word share down below after sharing this video. You can just hit copy link and send it to a friend. You could share it on Facebook, Twitter, anything like that. It all helps the channel and I appreciate it a ton. With that being said, thank you guys for watching. I've been Rehtycs, and I'll see you guys soon.